Hudson, can you take the wheel? Sure, Dad. Dad pulled over at a rest stop where everyone got out to stretch their legs. My 17-year-old sister, Elsa, my 15-year-old sister, Jess, or Jessica, Mom, Dad, and me, Hudson. I'm 20. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Sorensen clan. Yay! We were driving in my parents' SUV, a white Nissan Armada with an armada of luggage tied to the roof. We looked like a cartoon, a little van carrying twice its size of crap on top. The air smelled of pine, and the sky was the perfect blue of an early August day. We drove along the Grand Loop Road, passing lodgepole pines as we headed to the motel. It was our last real family vacation. I leave for UNLV in 2 weeks to work on an astronomy degree. Mom's sad the family is splitting. Dad's ecstatic he can have a game room. Elsa is like, whatever. And Jess is of the opinion that once I'm gone, she'll get a bigger allowance. Me, I'm both excited and anxious. I'm moving out, for real. My life is about to go galactic. Mom checked out the wrinkled map. It's one of those paper things you can buy at a gift store. The rest of us bought Cheetos and Doritos, but Mom had to buy a useless map. She laid it down on her lap and traced a line on the unfolded paper and hummed. Have you ever heard of the Obsidian Cliffs? It's supposed to be historic. That's where we are. It didn't look special to me. A forest of lodgepole pines behind me, and an angular cliff rising up above me. A plaque in front of it said that Native Americans mined obsidian for tools and weapons. Boring. Why did my folks talk me into the trip? Mom had said a family trip to Yellowstone will be the highlight of the year. Dad then said, I have 10 days of vacation I need to use. How about August? No school, no homework, and the best part, no yard work. I simply said, only if you let me drive. Elsa had remained glued to her phone, mumbling, if they don't have internet, I'm not going. I call shotgun, Jess had yelled. It had been a 2-day drive. We took I-15 to Salt Lake, spent the night in a motel, then drove I-80 east to Evanston, then US 89 through Jackson, and entered Yellowstone from the south entrance. We're originally from Dead Man's Butte, a small town about an hour north of Vegas. Good luck finding it on a map. It's one of those places where if you glance away to change radio stations, you miss it. The cliff rose 200 feet above me, an odd shade of basalt gray. It had marks that looked like some primordial god had left long scratches on it. Sometimes, when the sun hit it just right, a quick flash rippled across the surface. It had a presence about it, a depth, something I could feel but couldn't describe, almost as if it were comfortable, or familiar, or home. Which was ridiculous because I'd never been here before. I was only 20, but this place was beyond old. The plaque said Native Americans had been mining obsidian here for 11,000 years. A light breeze whistled through the pines, as if the trees were whispering to each other. An unusual smell brought me to the moment. It was plastic, but something else, an earthy smell. I had taken some classes at the community college, including an art class. It smelled like acrylic paints. And some guy's yummy cologne. Here in Yellowstone? I looked about. He stood beside an old yellow Volkswagen, an easel set up in front of him. A man with sandy hair and odd blue eyes, that brooding pout, a little taller than me, but lean, a runner's build. There was something timeless about him. He could have been 20, or 25, or 30. 2 paintbrushes jutted from his mouth as if it were another hand, with a third tucked behind his ear. He wore a light gray t-shirt with paint splatters, a pair of khaki shorts, also paint-covered, and sandals, Once again, paint-covered. A black cat rested in the shade a few feet from the car, licking its front paw. Its tail flitted around as if swatting flies. He turned to me, eyes widening. You feel it too? Hi, friends. I'm Gio, and Bentley is asleep next to me. Thanks for coming with us on our trip to Yellowstone. Before we get started, please leave a like and a comment. And now, back to our story. Chapter 2. The gentle ripple of the Obsidian Creek was behind me, the hot August sun slipping toward the horizon. Heat radiated from the road beneath my feet. The forecast was clear skies and record temperatures for the next week with no moisture in sight. I fluffed my shirt to cool off a little and walked over to the stranger. He and his easel stood in the shade of the nearby lodgepole pines, facing east toward the cliff. The paintbrushes that had been in his mouth were now in his hand. Name's Hudson Sorensen. Why are you eating paintbrushes? I asked. Grift. I don't use a family name. And you hold paintbrushes in your mouth so you can switch quickly, he said. Renaissance painters did it too, though they used oils, which probably wasn't great for them. Isn't that poisonous? I asked. Grift shrugged. Acrylics aren't. Oils used to have lead in them. Some people think that's part of what messed with Van Gogh's health. Isn't he the painter who cut his own ear off to give to his girlfriend? Grift's mouth twitched. Never said he was sane. Slowly, I drifted closer. Grift, unusual name. Isn't that a con or something? He chuckled. You'll have to fall in love with me to find out. I stepped beside him to look at the painting. The Obsidian Cliffs in shades of dark gray, the disturbing geometric outline captured on thick artboard. But it was the sky behind them that caught my interest. A night sky. The stars were carefully placed. These were summer constellations, painted so accurately I knew them. Cassiopeia's chair, Perseus holding aloft Medusa's head, even the great square of Pegasus. You know your stars, I murmured. One star stood out, an orange star that was part of the Perseus constellation, a red supergiant. Though it could be seen with the naked eye, Grift had made it brighter than it should be. If I didn't know better, I said, you're making Eta Parse the focal point of the entire painting. Grift stepped back from the painting. It's called Miram. He agreed, but didn't add anything more. Is it Latin or Arabic or Persian? I asked. No one knows where the name came from. It just showed up in the 20th century, Grift said. No history, no root language. It's like someone wrote it down once and everyone pretended it had always been there. I blinked. That's weird. Grift's eyes stayed on the orange star he'd painted too bright. Some names don't have origins, he murmured. They just arrive. I don't know where the impulse came from. Maybe the idea of one last fling before life got serious. But I couldn't stop myself. Do you want to get dinner? We're staying at the Canyon Cabins Lodge over in Canyon Village, about 45 minutes from here. My parents are eating at the Canyon Eatery, but I'd rather go to the M66 Grill. Join me, I'll buy. Grift narrowed his eyes. An odd shade I couldn't quite place. Not silver, not blue, but somewhere in between. He glanced at the painting, then fixed that unflinching gaze on me. Why? You don't know me. I glanced over at my family. I need a little downtime. Besides, I want to see more of your work. Chapter 3. I climbed behind the wheel of our SUV, smiling. Out with it, Elsa ordered. I have a date. What? Mom shrieked. Good God, Elsa shouted. We only just stopped there. So, I still have a date, I said, starting the SUV. We're having dinner at M66. But it's a family trip. Mom's voice whined, like she was trying to reel the moment back in. It is, I replied, but I can still date. That's not fair. How come Hudson can date and I can't? Jessica whined. Mom was about to say something, but Dad intervened with a shake of his head and a disbelieving smile. Drop it, honey. Our baby boy is grown up and needs his space. Why did Dad have to say it in his dad voice? Should I be embarrassed? Was it a backhanded observation? Better to let it drift into the sky, the way I always do with things that sting. The place we're staying is called Canyon Village, more of a rest stop with restaurants and motels than a real town. Our motel, Canyon Cabins, has two parts, the lodge and the private cabins. The cabins are separate little buildings that can sleep up to 4. The lodge is more like a motel, several floors, an elevator, a small restaurant, and 2 queen beds per room. That's where we're staying. 1 room for my parents, 1 room for the kids. Not ideal, so I used some of my savings to get my own room. I am not staying with my sisters. I dropped off my luggage, listened to Mom insist we needed to stick together, endured Elsa whining that it wasn't fair, whatever that meant, and then went my own way. The yellow Volkswagen was parked near the M66 grill, Grift leaning against it. He stared at the sky, a gentle smile on his face. Some country song blared from the grill, and the air smelled of grilled beef and onions. The evening had cooled, but only to livable levels. I strode over, suddenly unsure if I was intruding. What's so interesting? Mercury is on the horizon, he said, his voice carrying both longing and peace. Where? I stepped closer and shielded my eyes. He glanced at me, then pointed toward a bright star near the fading violet horizon. That one. Do you mind if we just walk? I'm not hungry. Sure, I said. What do you see in the Obsidian Cliffs? We'd gone only a short distance when Grift broke the silence. Obsidian is more than a simple tool used for arrowheads or spear points, and much more than a sacred stone. What do you mean? I asked. We followed the road, walking farther from Canyon Village. Grift's voice stayed soft, almost reverent. It grounds energy, but it doesn't need a copper wire connecting it to the earth. Obsidian transmutes negative energy into healthy energy. It even cleans the aura. Isn't that New Age talk? I said. It's never been proven scientifically. Grift's mouth twitched. Hasn't it? Or perhaps your instruments aren't sensitive enough to detect odic fields. Life gives it off, and crystals harmonize with it. Obsidian? If you could see it, it's like a star releasing its light. The Obsidian Cliffs are one of the largest deposits on Earth, a beacon to anyone looking. The next words opened a door inside me, something bordering on wonder. The Obsidian Cliffs, my friend, Grift said, placing a hand on my shoulder, are more than your people realize. Chapter 4. A streak of light sped across the sky, vanishing an instant later. A needle of excitement ran through me, sharp enough to make me shiver. The last time I'd seen a meteor, my friends and I had camped in the desert and stayed up all night watching the sky, waiting for each flash like it was a secret meant only for us. The Perseid meteor shower, I said, happens every August. Grift nodded. Peaks tomorrow night. That's why you're here? I asked. Grift focused on the sky. Do you know why they call them the Perseids? Because they originate in the Perseus constellation, I replied. Makes one of the biggest sky shows of the year. A long time ago, eons maybe, Grift said, his hand finding mine with a gentleness that startled me. A comet passed by Earth. Modern astronomers call it Swift-Tuttle, after the men who rediscovered it. The meteors are believed to be its leftover dust. What else could it be? I asked. Grift didn't answer. He let the warmth of his hand speak for him. We walked a little farther before I broke the silence. The skies are really clear tonight. If we get away from the lights, we'll be able to see everything. Grift looked at me, eyes narrowing. I don't think you have stargazing on your mind. Cute guy, middle of nowhere, I said, suddenly unsure if I'd pushed too far. What can I say? He studied me, not just looking, but seeing, as if he could read past skin and bone. Cute guy, middle of nowhere, Grift echoed softly. Then, after a beat, let's go for a drive. Chapter 5. We left in his old yellow Volkswagen, guarded carefully by his cat. Don't mind my companion, Grift said as we left Canyon Village. Professor Mayweather is rather possessive, but he keeps to himself, mostly. Mayweather had golden eyes and a tail that never stopped twitching, back and forth, a living metronome you could keep time with. He had a permanent nest in the back window and 2 desecrated toys, one a feathered thing, now an unrecognizable blob, the other the remains of a black and red plastic mouse that still smelled faintly of catnip. Grift continued, completely serious. Mayweather is the true owner of the car, and only, just barely, permits me to drive it. Grift's life consisted of 2 suitcases, a sleeping bag, a crate of bananas, an oversized rainbow beach towel, and a box, all crammed into the small back seat. This car smelled of cat, acrylic paints, and antiseptic wet wipes. His painting gear fit around the suitcases like an abstract Tetris puzzle. How do you fit so much in your back seat? I asked. There's more legroom than you'd expect, he said, revving the engine into a roar and shifting up a gear. Listen to that engine, I said. It can't come standard. What is it? Was that a grin? I installed a Continental R975 radial engine, 9 cylinders, 350 horsepower, 400 if it's in a good mood, 450 if I'm in a hurry. It's strong enough to tow a train, maybe 2 if it's downhill. I pulled up the engine on my phone. That's a Sherman tank engine. Yep. Isn't that overkill? Yep. Isn't it bigger than the car? Yep. How did you make it fit? He grinned. With a screwdriver and a ladder. He was playing me somehow, so I asked a serious, safe question. You don't have a gas gauge. What kind of mileage does your Volkswagen get? Grift nodded as if deciding whether to tell me the truth, and then answered, About 200 miles per banana peel. That's on the open road. Half that if we're in the city. Won't you get better mileage if you use the whole banana? I replied, my tone bleeding sarcasm. Grift snorted. Causes indigestion. I decided not to ask whether he meant the car, or the engine, or the cat. Some things are best not known. Never mind, I replied. Where's all your canvases? I never keep my paintings, at least not for long, he said. When I get low on money, I stop somewhere and sell a few so I can buy more bananas. I snorted and said, You must be pretty good. Where did you learn? He flashed an amused smile. I've met a lot of amazing people. The way he said it made me think he meant me. We headed northwest from Canyon Village, following the same lonely road my family had driven earlier today. For 45 minutes, the world was nothing but pines, darkness, and the occasional flash of a deer's eyes in our headlights. When we reached the pullout beneath the Obsidian Cliffs, the lot was empty. No cars, no voices, just us and the night. Grift pulled in, almost exactly where he had parked before, shut off the lights and turned off the engine. He sighed as if he'd come home, and whispered, What do you feel? If you mean the cliffs, like they're guarding a secret, I said. About you? We've only just met, but I'm attracted to you." In the darkness, I thought I saw him smile. He climbed out, walked to my side, and opened the door for me. "I want to show you something." I stepped out. The door closed. The interior light blinked off, leaving us in darkness and shadow. And wonder. The clear midnight sky held more stars than even the Nevadan desert. There, the eternal glow of the city that never sleeps washed out half the heavens. Here, nothing dimmed the view. Not only the brightest stars shone, but those I'd never seen, flickering like foam on a distant ocean swell. Celestial patterns invisible in other places revealed themselves. The faint river of the Milky Way stretched across the heavens, a pale current of light. Familiar constellations sharpened into clarity. The chair of Cassiopeia, the square of Pegasus, the angled reach of Andromeda. The long shape of Perseus with his right hand held aloft, holding the fabled trophy, the head of Medusa. And there, near the raised hand, burned the red supergiant, Eta Persei. Miriam. The stars carried faint colors, mostly white, but some tinged blue, yellow, even orange. Miriam was orange. A beauty unknown. A soft ache thrummed in my chest, a yearning, a desire, a need to reach out and touch the infinite. Grift stood behind me, arms wrapped around my waist, his lips close to my ear. He whispered, "What do you feel?" The Obsidian Cliffs rose before us, a dark presence heavy on my soul, a guardian of sorts. The lodgepole pines and the rustle of the river walled us in. Our intimate, private moment that would change my life, celebrated by the smell of pine. A car passed the rest stop, its headlights briefly breaking the spell, the faint strains of a voice singing, "Send me an angel," drifted through the stillness before the night swallowed them whole. Grift's nearness, his warmth, the whisper of his breath on the back of my neck, woke something inside me. I turned in his arms until I faced him. The faint reflection in his eyes echoed the stars above. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. None of that mattered as our lips met. Alone, in the dark, in the stillness, with the faint orange star of Eta Persei. Miriam, shining from the hand of Perseus. We were blessed with a night of warmth and closeness I had never felt before. The car ticked slightly as its mammoth engine cooled. Who would have thought a Volkswagen could have such an enormous monster under the hood? Chapter 6. We woke in a sleeping bag at the foot of the cliffs, pre-dawn silver edging the darkness away. Mayweather had curled up between our heads, purring into the cool air. Even in August, even in a heat wave, Yellowstone is freezing in the mornings. Grift looked up at the paling sky, his face relaxed and gently smiling. "Morning," he whispered. "You look excited," I whispered back. "Big night tonight." "Something special happening?" He nodded. "Then let's make today a special day." I leaned over and kissed his nose. Grift reached for his pants, dug into a pocket, and pulled out a small round stone. About the size of a ping-pong ball, it was a perfect sphere of black, polished glass with tiny flecks of white. "Snowflake obsidian," Grift said, placing it in my hand. The white specks seemed familiar. Precisely placed, they echoed the constellations. The chair of Cassiopeia, the angled reach of Andromeda, Perseus with his right hand holding Medusa's head. All of them were there, tiny stars caught in glass. Miriam's speck glowed with its familiar wash of orange. "I can't take this," I said. Grift smiled and folded my fingers around it. "I want someone to remember me." "What is this?" I asked. He paused, considering. "You ever ridden the subway?" No subways in Dead Man's Butte, but I've seen 'em on TV. Good enough, he smiled. Think of this as a subway pass. I rolled the small black sphere in my palm, lifting it to the light to see if I could peer through it. To where? Grift lay back, hands tucked behind his head, eyes on the lightening sky. Home, he said quietly. Chapter 7. We agreed to share breakfast after a quick shower and a change of clothes. I had a solo room. Grift was more than welcome. That was the plan. But when we drove into Canyon Village, 3 black SUVs were parked outside the Canyon Lodge Eatery, identical, polished, out of place among the dusty Subarus and rental minivans. Grift stiffened. You know them? I asked. Yeah. They know you? No. Who are they? Grift drove slowly, careful not to draw attention. 2 men leaned against the nearest SUV. Black combat pants, black t-shirts, black sunglasses. A thin, glossy piece of plastic curled around their left ears. They spoke quietly, heads angled toward each other, but I couldn't hear a word. They don't officially exist, Grift said at last, his tone growing low and guarded. An extra-governmental unit that seeks out and handles things people don't want to understand. Men in Black are real, like the movies? Mayweather stared at the men, a low, fateful meow escaping him. Grift smiled, but it wavered and died fast. They don't have the gadgets, but they're a lot scarier. They are best avoided. I stayed quiet until we'd driven past. Let's hide out in my room. The 2 men didn't even look up as the old yellow Volkswagen rumbled past. My shoulders stayed tight long after they were out of sight. Chapter 8. Grift showered first. I was in the shower when someone knocked on the door. Time for breakfast, Dad yelled. I was rinsing my hair when I heard Mom shriek, There's a cat? That's Mayweather, Grift replied. I turned the water off, wrapped one of the towels around me, and stepped into the chaos. Somebody must have told the designers that orange was a calming color. Burnt orange carpet, apricot bedspread, beige orange walls, hardwood furniture that looked like it had been bought wholesale from IKEA. My blue suitcases clashed. The black cat lying on one of the pillows clashed. My clothes, neatly thrown over a chair, clashed. Grift stood by the door, speaking to my mortified mom and stoic dad, as if he did this all the time. As I stepped out of the bathroom, Mom took one look and blushed. But. Dad whispered, Dear, he's not your baby boy anymore. Would you like to come in? Grift asked. My eldest sister stepped past, saw me, and said, Jess and I will wait in the lobby. What's going on? Jess yelled from the hallway. Nothing, Elsa said. Is Hudson in trouble? No, but Mom and Dad are, Elsa replied, their voices growing fainter as they walked down the hall. Realizing I'd forgotten my manners, I quickly said, Mom, Dad, this is Grift. He's the artist we met at the cliffs. He was your date? Mom stumbled over her words. Last night, who you, went out to, dinner with? I picked up my suitcase and pulled out a light blue t-shirt, a pair of full-length khakis, and a sturdy pair of hiking shoes. It will be hot today, but I don't like mosquito bites. Pleasure is mine, ma'am, Grift said. You mind if Grift joins us for breakfast? I asked. Mom looked like she had swallowed a fly. Dad shrugged and smiled. Sure, we'll wait downstairs while you get dressed. He led Mom out, and Grift closed the door. Chapter 9. We had breakfast at the Canyon Lodge Eatery. The SUVs were still out front. The 2 men we'd seen earlier had gone inside. Every table was full. The air smelled of bacon and coffee, voices rising in a chaotic blend of English, Spanish, and French. Silverware clattered. A waitress drifted from table to table with a steaming pot of coffee, topping off mugs without breaking stride. Another waitress shouted from across the room, "God, I've been asked that question 1,000 times. Old Faithful's schedule is online. Check your phone." 2 tables had been pushed together. 6 people, 4 women, 2 men, all in black, sat around them, a map spread out between their plates. Several pairs of sunglasses rested beside half-eaten pancakes, bacon, and eggs. I tried to scope out the map as we walked past. A Yellowstone map with several places circled. One was the Obsidian Cliffs. They kept their voices low, almost impossible to hear. All I caught was when a woman built like a bodybuilder, arms like granite, said, "Tonight is ground zero." Grift heard it. His jaw tightened, and his eyes hardened. I took his arm and steered him toward the round corner booth that could see date. We slid in. We ordered coffee, but Grift stared out the window, head tilted as if listening to something only he could hear. We made small talk about the weather, about the upcoming school year, about Old Faithful and Morning Glory Pool. A waitress brought out our food, balancing plates of pancakes as the 6 people in black walked past. I hoped they were leaving. The aroma of fresh pancakes and maple syrup joined the coffee and bacon. "I made a painting of Morning Glory Pool," Grift said, pulling out his phone and scrolling through his gallery. "Can I see?" Jess asked. She's into art. Won 2nd place in the middle school art show. The first photo was Morning Glory Pool glowing under a night sky. Percy is holding his right hand up toward the faintly glowing star, Eta Persei. The next was Grotto Geyser in full eruption, a midnight scene with Cassiopeia, Perseus, and Andromeda above it. Grift paused, looking a moment too long before turning the painting towards us. His face held a flicker of sadness, and his smile, brave but thin, wavered at the edges. "Good memories?" Mom asked softly. Grift nodded. "It reminds me of—" He caught himself, the word hanging there like a step he couldn't take. Then more carefully, "A place a long way from here." After 5 or 6 more paintings, Grift and Jess talked about art, about paints, about working outdoors. Mom kept glancing at me, eyes red and watery. Elsa secretly took a picture of Grift and me. Dad ate pancakes. When the waitress returned, we had her take a family selfie with our phones. Grift was going to step away, but Dad said, "We've had pancakes together. That means you're one of us." I didn't realize it until later, but that was the last normal moment of my life. Chapter 10. I kissed Grift goodbye shortly after breakfast. We exchanged phone numbers, but I think we both knew we wouldn't see each other again. 2 comets passing in the night. "Don't forget me," he said, standing by his Volkswagen as I climbed into my folks' SUV. All 3 black SUVs had moved. 2 were parked at the Canyon Cabins Lodge, where we stayed last night. Even men in black had to sleep sometime. There was no sign of the 3rd SUV. Sadness filled my chest as we pulled away, and Grift disappeared behind us. What we had shared last night had been more than a casual encounter. I ached for him, something I hadn't done for someone in years. My encounters had always been casual and fun, but this one was different. It was deeper. Odic harmonies or whatever, something about us connected. Elsa drove. All the windows were down to let the wind blow out the stale air smell. I sat in the back seat and pulled the small sphere from my pocket. The stars across its surface hadn't changed. Dad glanced over but said nothing, probably assuming it was a souvenir I'd picked up. I remembered last night, the Obsidian Cliffs above us, the infinite above that, the constellations I loved so much, the scent of pines, his cologne, the faint smoke from a distant campfire. Pine needles muffled the world, but an owl cried somewhere in the dark, its mournful call breaking the stillness. The sphere felt like Grift, not just a reminder of an incredible night, but when I held it, it was as if I touched his hand again, heard his voice, watched him paint. I closed my eyes, remembering the brush of his lips, the gentle way his fingers traced my cheek, the softness in the way he spoke. The lodgepole pines rustled softly in the wind, their sound blending with the taste of salt on his lips, the strawberry fragrance of his hair. It was a night stitched together from small miracles, a kind of gentle passion that settled deep and refused to fade. I found myself returning to it again and again. "That's odd," Elsa said, slowing down. "We just turned left onto North Rim Drive, toward Lookout Point. Like yesterday, the sky was perfectly clear, not a cloud in sight. Mom, who sat in the passenger seat, set down her phone and said, 'Do you think that's the same one that was back at the diner?' The black sphere went back into my pocket, and I leaned forward for a better view. 'Do you think they're in trouble?' Dad asked as we drew closer. Jess looked up from her phone. 'Elsa, don't stop. This is how so many slasher movies start.' The third black SUV had pulled off the road. Its 2 passengers stood near the hood, a map spread across it. One of them held a small black box. The other was the bodybuilder woman. They wore their sunglasses. 'What's wrong with their skin?' Jess asked. 'They look like Ken dolls.' Inside the eatery, they had looked normal, but under the sun, their skin had an odd sheen. 'Too much cheap sunscreen,' Elsa replied. The box was matte black, 3 inches by 5 inches, and 2 inches thick. It wasn't a phone, but it had a display, though I couldn't see what was on it. It gave off a rhythmic hum, like a sonar blip, or one of those motion sensors from the Alien movies. They looked up as we approached. We waved. They waved. We drove on. They consulted the little box, then packed up the map, climbed into their SUV, and drove after us. "There should be another turnoff in about a mile," Dad mumbled, though he kept glancing back. "The brink of the lower falls," Mom said, looking at the map. The black SUV followed us, never tailgating, always remaining a safe distance. "Maybe we're going to the same place," Elsa whispered, but sounding more like she was trying to convince herself than anybody else. "Good point," Mom said. "They aren't police, and they aren't park rangers. We're getting worried over nothing." As we neared the turnoff, I tapped Elsa on the shoulder. "Turn here." We turned. They turned as well. I looked at Dad. He pursed his lips. Mom clucked her tongue. "Pull over and let them pass," Jessica said. Chapter 11. "Someone else drive," Elsa said, pulling into a small picnic area nestled among the lodgepole pines. The trees formed a canopy around us, an ornate cathedral of green with a carpet of dried pine needles. The air was still, no sound save the nearby crackling of a fire. A sign said, "Beware of bears, no camping." I chuckled. It would have been fun yesterday, but today, the double meaning hit me wrong. Elsa parked near a small area with tables and benches and elevated grills. The garbage cans were metal and bolted to the ground, their lids tightly clamped on. A small family with 3 young kids stood at one grill barbecuing hot dogs, laughing like they had time to celebrate. We climbed out of our SUV, not laughing. As one, we looked behind us. Breakfast became a brick in my stomach. The SUV followed, taking a parking space 5 away from us. "They're here," Jess said. Its engine turned off, leaving only the stillness of the forest and the heavy smell of pine. Beneath the silence, the distant rumble of the lower falls pressed against the air, steady and low. It should have been relaxing, but my whole body tensed like I was preparing for a fight. We watched as a man and a woman climbed out, wearing dark glasses, their skin oddly stiff, and they carried the small box. The bodybuilder woman consulted the readings before walking in our direction. Verified, the other man said. She leaned the machine over so he could see the monitor, like a star on top of a Christmas tree. A flock of ravens took off from the tops of the trees, their wings thrumming against the sky. She walked over, following whatever the box indicated. Dad stood in front of Mom. I stood in front of the girls. "Why are you following us?" Dad asked. The man didn't smile. "It's not the parents." The woman pointed the box at me and my sisters. "One of their brood." Dad stepped in front of me. "What is this about?" "Have you met someone unusual recently?" the man asked. Mom glanced at me. Jess gripped my arm. I merely answered, "Why?" The woman pointed the box at me and checked the screen. "Turn out your pockets." "Show us your badge," Dad said, matter-of-factly. "Be aware that I hit record the moment you exited your vehicle. This whole conversation is live-streamed to my channel." I didn't doubt that Dad was recording, but the live stream part? Pure bluff. I hit record on my phone. Elsa had hers up and was recording as well. Chapter 12. Mom spoke up. "There must be a misunderstanding. We were in Nevada day before yesterday." The man tapped the device again, sliding a finger across the screen. "There are no outgoing emissions from those devices. The father is lying." The bodybuilder woman turned her head towards me with a slow, deliberate precision. "It is confirmed. The younger male radiates high levels." The man didn't look away from the readout. "Spectrum?" 15,000 and stable." She removed her glasses, and without the tint, her eyes looked flat, depthless, like polished stones. "He has had long-term exposure, and recently." A pulse of cold slid down my spine. Long-term exposure to what? The woman stepped closer to me. "Describe the individual you have encountered." It wasn't a question, it was an order, one I dared not follow. "You have the wrong person," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I start college in 2 weeks. I'm just an ordinary guy." The man took the device and pointed it at each person, finally settling on me. None of the others registered elevated odic levels, only the male offspring. "It might not be him," the woman replied, closing the distance by another step. "It could be something he carries." A memory surfaced. Years ago, a friend of mine kept a pair of bearded dragons in an old 50-gallon aquarium he'd converted into a terrarium. He fed them crickets every day. The lizards had a distinctive smell, warm sand, dry scales, something faintly metallic. The bodybuilder woman had that same smell. "Turn out your pockets," the man said. His tone was clipped, military, as if he'd already decided the outcome. My hand twitched toward my jeans. Were they looking for the little sphere Grift had given me? The subway pass, he'd called it? A joke, or maybe not a joke at all. Was it valuable? Dangerous? Was this what they were detecting? "Show them you don't have anything," Dad said. "Maybe they'll leave us alone after that." If I was wrong. Their detector wasn't reacting to anything in my pockets. It was reacting to me. Trying to buy time, I pulled my keys, my wallet, and the sphere from my pockets. My shoulders tightened as I inhaled, ready to run. Again, the sphere felt like Grift. I closed my eyes for half a heartbeat. And he was there, painting at the base of the Obsidian Cliffs. Mayweather sat nearby, tail curled neatly around his paws. Grift looked up, frowned, and said, "There isn't much time. Come to me." I had the impression that one of the other 2 black SUVs was in the area, searching for him. Grift was alone, and the people with odd-looking skin and who smelled like a lizard cage were after him. I had to help. I can't, I said. They're here. See, only keys, Jess said, snapping the vision in half. Can we go now? The man stepped forward and touched the small box to the wallet, phone, and keys, but not to the black sphere. He didn't even notice it. Maybe he didn't see it? That's impossible. Or is it? Dad, I asked quietly, what am I holding? Keys in your wallet, he replied. And your phone, Elsa nodded. I swallowed and asked, anything else? They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. They couldn't see the sphere, not my family, not the guys in sunglasses. Was I the only person who saw it? But Dad had seen it earlier. Or had he just been glancing my way? You will come with us, the man said. I shoved the things back into my pockets and counted down with my fingers. Dad saw. Good. 3, 2, 1. I rushed the woman, knocking her down. Dad did the same with the man, and we made a break for the SUV. Dad jumped into the driver's seat, Mom into the passenger seat, and the 3 of us kids dove into the back. The SUV spun out as we fled, Dad reaching decent speed within seconds. He tore back the way we'd come, back toward canyon cabins, back toward the safety of people. Chapter 13. On the drive, I looked at the selfie we'd taken as a family, with Grift, only a few hours ago. A normal painter with a black cat and a yellow Volkswagen. He seemed normal last night, smelled normal, looked normal. Well, better than normal. He looked sexy and mysterious, and I wanted to feel his skin on mine. I leaned back in the seat, the fabric hot from the sun. Whatever trouble Grift was in, I was now connected to it. The black SUV still followed us. It had gained distance, but hadn't overtaken. What would happen if it did? Who were they? What did they want? Drive faster, Dad, I murmured. There was only one little teeny problem. If one black SUV was behind us, and I suspected another one was still at the Obsidian Cliffs, then where was the third? The answer appeared right in front of us, blocking the narrow road into Canyon Village. What the hell? Dad shouted. Every light on the dashboard blinked out at once. The air conditioner shut off, leaving an uncomfortable quiet. Then our SUV coughed like an old man, wheezed, and completely died. The pines surrounded us, a silent wall of shadow. Even the soft chirping of the insects had stilled. I swallowed. Hard. Chapter 14. Dad slowed to a stop, the dashboard dark and silent. The black SUV behind us pulled in tight, blocking us. Mom tried to call, but her words chilled the air. My phone is dead too. Elsa tried hers and found the same thing. So did mine. It worked a minute ago, Jess said. Could they be blocking cell signal? Mom said. And our car? Elsa said, her voice hinting of hysteria. They're blocking electricity? Nobody said anything, but we all thought the same thing. We were cut off. The bodybuilder woman consulted the device and nodded at one of the men. He walked to the door I sat next to and said, The male offspring will leave the vehicle now. He held a matte black Beretta with suppressor. The whole thing so quiet and unreflective, it seemed to drink in the light around it. It didn't have a safety switch. He tapped on the window with the suppressor, inches from my head. You will exit now and come with us. Dad began to say something. The man outside my window aimed at the rear tire and fired. Barely more than a soft click. The tire popped and hissed. Elsa began whimpering. You will exit, the woman repeated. In her hand was a second Beretta with suppressor. She fired at the front driver's side tire. It popped and hissed. The SUV settled, now tilting slightly on the left. My soul had gone cold. I knew what I had to do. To save my family, I had to surrender myself. If I did, would they leave my parents and my sisters alone? I opened the door. Dad immediately said, Don't. I love all of you, I said. and stepped out. The man escorted me to the SUV directly behind ours. Dad tried to exit. The bodybuilder woman waved her gun. Dad closed the door. "Where are you taking my son?" A second man walked with us. The reptile smell became stronger. They were using me to get to Grift. That wasn't going to happen. If I was going to escape, it had to be now. They had guns. It was stupid, but I shoved the man to my right, knocking him over. He went down. His gun flew from his hand. I ran for the trees, but never made it. The soft click behind me startled me. Then a bolt of pain tore through my leg, sharp enough to steal my breath. My body panicked before my mind caught up. Warmth spread down my thigh, and the world tilted. My legs folded beneath me. The sun-warmed asphalt met me, hot against my body. You'd think I'd scream, but the only sound that escaped was a groan. Mom did scream. I didn't really notice, because a black cat walked toward me, offering a single meow. The cat was the only thing moving. Not the trees, not my family, not the people with guns. Only the cat and the man behind him. Grift walked towards me, knelt, and laid a hand on my leg. "This is bad, my friend." The cat meowed. "Professor, can I keep him?" Grift whispered teasingly as he picked me up. The cat meowed again. "What about my family?" I croaked out. He glanced down at the cat. "Professor, you'll handle the details while I take care of Hudson?" The cat meowed. "Yes," he said, "I know the rules, but this qualifies as medical. Besides, they are the ones interfering." I gripped his arm. "I need a hospital." "Not to worry, my friend. I'll take care of you and show you the universe while we're at it." A doorway opened behind him. Not like a door with hinges and a knob. More like reality opened a window into a place where colors lived and breathed. Grift carried me inside. Chapter 15. Dad's cell phone rang. I know because I was the one who dialed. He was at work inputting credit card data or something. It's always where he is on a Tuesday afternoon. He stared at the caller ID a moment, seeing my name, and wondered if he saw wrong. It had been a week since the day I vanished, and my family had appeared in Canyon Village without knowing how. Dad picked up. "Hi, Dad," I said. "Can't talk long. You wouldn't believe the long-distance charges, but I wanted to let you know I'm all right. Grift says hi." "Where are you?" Dad said. Grift stepped behind me and lightly snuggled my neck. "That you wouldn't believe either," he said. I tried to stay focused as Grift's hands wrapped around my chest. I barely kept a straight face when I said, "Consider it either a vacation or a gap year, depending on how long I'll be gone." "How long will that be?" I inhaled sharply as Grift's hands drifted down my chest. "I'll let you know." "Give everyone our love," Grift innocently added just before he kissed the back of my neck. "Somehow," I muttered, "I have to go." "Did you say our?" Dad said. "We're boyfriends," I added as Grift began tugging my shirt upward. "You and Grift?" "Don't worry, Dad. Professor Mayweather is watching over us. Call later when I can talk." The end. Thanks for joining Bentley and me on our visit to Yellowstone. We had fun. See you next time. Peace, my friends. I love you all.